Going to open us up with a prayer.
So let's stand, please. Father, Heavenly Lord, we thank you for the best you gave us, Father. We thank you for this beautiful country that you allow us to live in. Father, I pray that we begin to do the things that are right in your sight. Father, we might bring this country back and restore it to what it was. Right now, just bless our time and our speaker here tonight. It's in Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. Before we get to our speaker, I just wanted to let you know if anybody is interested that this Saturday in Nashville, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, they're going to have Donald Trump speaking, and they're also going to have, I just found out Louis Gohmert will be there. There's a few others, I'm not sure of them, but those are the two. Now whether you're a Trump supporter or not, and I'm not pushing Trump, but whether you're a supporter or not, it'll probably be interesting. Maybe he'll throw somebody out, I don't know. But you can still, if you're interested, you can go to TennesseeWatchman.com and you can get a one-day ticket. The event's, it's pretty much an all-day event. They provide a box lunch. It's $65, something like that. So if you're interested in that, you're going to cover the 17th. Okay. All right. Richard Archie is the coordinator for the Tennessee Firearms Association for West Tennessee. He's been involved with this in a leadership position for about 5 years. And I just want to say one thing about the TFA. Anybody here have a permit? I know a few of you have a permit. You have your permit in Tennessee because of the TFA. And a lot of the places that you can take your weapon now, you have because of the TFA, and in the last 5 or 6 years, the efforts of Richard and John Harris and a few others. So there's nobody in the state of Tennessee that knows more about constitutional carry or any Tennessee gun issue or the Tennessee Constitution for that matter. So let's give them a big hand.
Okay, thanks for that warm welcome and that trite that you talked about me there. So, I am the West Tennessee director of the Tennessee Firearms Association. I got involved in this effort back in '95 when we moved back to Tennessee from the state of Texas. My wife was on dialysis at the time, and we were doing home dialysis, and so she stayed hooked up to a machine for 5 hours a day. The people at the Commercial Appeal decided it was in their best interest to publish every handgun carry permit holder's name in the state of Tennessee, and they put the web page up to where you could go and look, and at that time it had your social security number and it had a Google map address of where your home was. And I just couldn't stand that, because at that point I was traveling the United States at that time. I worked for a large design build construction firm, and I was on an airplane about half the time, so my wife was there at home by herself, tied to the machine. She couldn't get up to defend herself. And I got really upset about that situation. I started looking around to find out what I could do about it, and the only person in Tennessee that I could find that was willing to help me was John Harris out of Nashville. And he is the executive director of the Tennessee Firearms Association. He asked me if I would at that point join him in an effort to get Chris Peck, who was the editor-in-chief of the Commercial Appeal, on the carpet about this thing. And within 6 weeks we had it pulled down to where your social security number was off and they could no longer put your address on their webpage. It took us another 4 years to get the legislature to understand it was necessary to pass a bill saying that you couldn't put everybody's name that had a permit up for everybody to see. I remember we did a debate at the First Amendment Center in Nashville. Gene Polamasinski, who is the head of that august organization out of Vanderbilt up there, brought Chris Peck, myself, and John Harris together, and we had a conversation about that in front of about 400 people. And Peck said, the reason that I think it's necessary for everyone to know who's got a firearm in the state of Tennessee is because what if my kid decides to go home and spend the night with somebody? I need to know where there's a gun in the house. And I said, Mr. Peck, let me ask you this question. You're from Wyoming, right? And he said, yes. I said, you lived out there among a bunch of elk and deer hunters, right? Yeah. I said, do you know the effective range of a .357 round and that of a .30-06, what the difference is? And he said, well, no, I don't. And I said, well, .357 round go about 400 yards, and a 30-06 round can go about 4 miles. And so you're telling me it's necessary for you to know who's got a 357 in their home, but you don't care about the 1.6 million people in the state of Tennessee that have hunting license and have deer rifles. And it's stopped in cold.
You normally don't need this, Richard, but just in case.
Okay.
Some water for you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Okay. Can y'all hear me without it anyway? Normally you can. We were able at that point to beat back the commercial appeal, and they actually took that website down that had your addresses and social security numbers on it. And then 4 years later, we were able to get the General Assembly to pass a bill saying it was no longer legal for them to post that. Now what you find still, if you go to the commercial appeal, you will see their old handgun carry database that they were able to purchase prior to 4 years ago when we got that bill passed. But as the people fall off of it, they're not getting the new ones, it's getting to be less and less effective, so nobody really, they don't tout it anymore, and I would expect within the next year or so that's going to go away. So that was one of the first things that I got involved in. Then we got to the parking lot bill. What we have across 27 other states in the union say that it is necessary for you to be able to provide for your own safety and security for your travelers to and from your work, and that your private vehicle is your private property, and if you are not a criminal, if you have not been adjudicated mentally deficient by a court, or if you have not been convicted of domestic assault or abuse, then you should have the right to keep your legally possessed item in your private property, which is your vehicle on that parking lot. And we chased this thing from 2006. We finally got it just about passed last year. It's not really there regardless of what the GA will tell you. You can still be fired for having a firearm in your vehicle, legal or not. Now what you've got to do with Mark Green's bill that he passed last year, if you can prove that they fired you because you had that handgun in your vehicle, you can literally sue them for damages at that point. But you got to prove it. The way it is in Texas where I came from, they don't get to ask you. They can't have a prescription in their employee handbook that says, we can tell you can't have that firearm in your vehicle in the outside parking lot, because they realize that that's none of their business. So, with that being the case, just last year, like I said, we finally got it to where if you can prove that they fired you because you had a handgun in your car, and that's all it is right now is handguns, it's not long guns, by the way. So in other words, an individual like me that decides he wants to go squirrel hunting in the morning before work, if my company had a prescription in their handbook, the way our General Assembly has left it right now, that said you couldn't have a firearm in your vehicle as a condition of your employment. They literally could ask you if you would allow them to search your vehicle. If you said no, if you knew that you had a firearm in there, then they could terminate you instantly. Is that the society that we want to live in? It's not the one that I want to live in. Last time I checked, the Second Amendment, and a lot of people, and the gentleman back here tonight, Air Force, I believe, was your branch of the service, told me, so I think that my permit is the Second Amendment. And I said, well, that's good, unless you live in Tennessee. Because unless you want to spend some time at the Crossbar Motel, you better go ahead and pay the tax that the state of Tennessee requires for you as a defense against prosecution. Because you have no right in the state of Tennessee to carry a loaded firearm off of your property. It is still a crime under 39-17-1307, which says that it is a crime, in fact, to carry a loaded firearm or a club off of your own personal property. What you do when you pay for your permit is you buy, through a tax that the state levies, a defense against prosecution. Go and look it up. They can literally arrest you if they see a firearm, period, at any point. Law enforcement can do that. They can carry you in and hold you overnight, and the next morning when the judge calls you to account and says, we caught you carrying a firearm, that's a crime in the state of Tennessee, and you say, Your Honor, I'm sorry, but I have a handgun carry permit. You go, I'd like to see that, please. And they'll take from what they took you the night before, and they'll bring it to the judge. You'll say, you're so correct, you do. And they will turn you loose. They may give you your weapon back. They don't have to at that point. Okay? Make sure you understand the rules and the facts. So, What we're here tonight to talk about is constitutional carry. What constitutional carry is your absolute God-given right to keep and bear arms for the common defense. In 1796, when the Tennessee Constitution was written, Article 11, Section 26, which was at that time the Declaration of Rights, it's changed up, it's now Article 1, but at that point it was Article 11, says that the freemen of this state have a right to keep and bear arms for common defense. Now, a great big black period at the end of that sentence. You don't say anything about an elected employee saying that they've got a right to tell you whether you can or cannot carry that weapon. In 1870, at the end of the Civil War, those of you who know what a Jim Crow law is, the Democrats were still really in power in the state of Tennessee, and they passed a Jim Crow law here. It was called the Intent to Go Armed Clause of the TCA Code. I referenced it a minute ago. 39-17-1307, which says that you can't leave your property with a loaded firearm. It used to say, or with a knife with a blade of over 4 inches or a club. Now, 2 years ago, Senator Mike Bell carried a bill that got passed, and they pulled the knife statute off. So you can carry a switchblade in the state of Tennessee now and not be going armed. I find it a little difficult to understand what the difference is in me putting my 38 in my pocket and carrying a machete. I think I'm armed in either case. I don't have quite the range with the machete. By the same token, you can do some pretty wicked damage with them bad boys. But that's been taken off. We can, in fact, by legislation, remove those impediments to our constitutional and God-given rights that our forefathers laid out for us. You have to understand first and foremost, government does not give you your rights. Those are yours naturally and native, and they come from God. Now, there are some who say, well, I'm agnostic or I'm non-religious or whatever. Well, then nature's God, as they put it in our Constitution, whatever you want to think of, those are things which are unalienable. Now, the way people like to pronounce that word is inalienable, but that's not the way it's pronounced. That's not the way it's written. Inalienable. You all know what a lien is, right? You don't pay your bills. If you own a car, you think you own a car, you got a deal with Chase Mortgage, you don't make your payments, they're going to come and put a lien on that car. They're going to pick it up and carry it in. All right? That's a lien. That's, your rights are inalienable. You cannot, government cannot put a lien on them. Nobody can put, they can shoot you and kill you. They can take your life and your liberty, but they cannot lien your constitutional rights that come to you from God. It's necessary that we understand these things and hold our representatives accountable. Now, I want to take a second here, in full disclosure, Representative Jay Reedy is here tonight. I let him know that I was going to be here. There's one few guys up there that believes with us. There are a few of them, they're not a bunch of them, but I can promise you right now, this gentleman understands it. He's doing his best to learn as much as he can about the trappings of the legislature. Anytime that I've been up there and I speak to one of the guys that is of long days with the legislature, so you just don't get what it's like to have to pass legislation. Why, it's just like making sausage. Everybody likes what it tastes like, but nobody wants to see it being made. Now, I got news for these folks. I've been making sausage since I was about 3 years old. I've been this deep in what it takes to make it. If you're not willing to get your elbows a little bloody and gory, you need to stay out of the kitchen. Each and every one of us are responsible for legislation in this state. These are our, and I don't mean this ugly, but they're our elected employees. Okay? We elect them and we employ them to be statesmen. What we expect them to do is to go to the legislature and act on our behalf. Now, if you read, and I'm going to have to section through here just a second, the legislator's oath, I'm going to paraphrase. It says that they won't do anything that will impede their constituents from being able to enjoy their constitutional rights. Is that pretty much what it says? All the rest of it's follow wrong. You can dress it up, put a pretty dress on it, but that's the whole crux of the matter. Their job is to make sure that everything that passes through that house, or does not impede your ability to enjoy your constitutional rights, both that of the state and the union. People talk about the Second Amendment. We had this a while ago, that it's your right to carry. No, I beg to differ with that. Basically what the Second Amendment says is that the federal government will not infringe on your right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say anything about the state, folks. 10th Amendment says if it's not something we absolutely gave the state or the federal government or told them they couldn't do, it remains the state's business. Your ability to keep and bear arms in Tennessee has nothing to do with the federal government because they've been told to keep their grubby blue clothes off of them. It absolutely has everything to do with your state legislators. So if you're upset about the fact that you can't carry a gun in to pick your kid up in school, or that you can't have a teacher that you trust there armed in case some nut job comes in the front door knowing it's a gun-free zone, the people that you need to be mad about is not Barack Obama and the federal government. It needs to be Governor Haslam and your state legislature, because they're the ones that are responsible here in the state of Tennessee. Wyoming, teachers are armed. Texas, they started arming teachers. Arkansas was getting ready to arm teachers. Now, I used to be a school teacher. I violated law then because I kept one close at hand, because I knew that it was better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Okay? I never went to school a day that I didn't have a firearm pretty close to hand. I never took it out. I've had guns since I was 6 years old. I've got one of those that I still own. It's an Ivor Johnson 12 gauge, single shot, old thumb brake shotgun that my grandfather gave me to go coon hunting with it. I've owned that thing for nearly 54 years. It's never shot anybody. It's in its house right now, and I don't have to worry about what it's going to do tonight, because no firearm of itself acts in any way. Just like your car is not going to get up and drive down the road, have a beer and kill somebody. So, you know, it takes people to be behind the instruments that cause death. It takes people to be behind the instruments that cause good. Either way, inanimate objects don't do anything by themselves, folks. It all relies on us. Let's talk about the genius of gun control and non-gun control laws in the state of Tennessee. How many of you know when we became a state? 1796 is when we became a state. There was a group of about 14 guys got together in a house on the other side of Nashville, and they sat down. One of those was Andrew Jackson. Now, we all know Andrew Jackson from several different actions in the state of Tennessee, and he's not personally one of my favorites because I have Native American heritage. And he lied, cheated, stole, and murdered a bunch of my relatives. Okay? It was absolutely necessary for him to do so. He had to have Cherokee Indians during the creek. Y'all all heard the term, good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise. They ain't talking about water getting over the road, folks. They're talking about the Creek Indians down out of Georgia. Okay? Because they were the nemesis of those individuals who were trying to steal their land. We worked the pact with the Cherokee and said, if you'll just help us, we'll let you keep your ancestral land. And if you will go with us to fight the Creeks, we'll see to it that you're never, ever, ever run off your property. Federal government for you, right there. All right. They went down, Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Had it not been for the Cherokee Indians, we would not have won that battle. There would be no Old Hickory. Old Hickory got his name from the fact that at the end of that battle, his soldiers didn't have, the federal government didn't send enough money with them for him to get his wounded soldiers back. And he said, if they're going to have to walk, I'm going to walk. He got off of his horse and he walked every step back with his soldiers from the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. And one of his guys said, that old bird's tough as a piece of hickory. And that's where his name came from. A little bit of history for you. Do you know where we got the name Volunteer State?
Volunteer wars.
Which war?
Mexico.
Texas.
Nope, absolutely not.
Civil War.
War of 1812, when Willie Bunt, who was in fact the first governor of the state of Tennessee, provisional governor, called for 2,500 volunteers to meet Colonel Jackson at the courthouse steps in Franklin, Tennessee. 7,500 people showed up. They went, good Lord, these people would rather fight than switch. Okay, you remember that old Tarrington commercial? That's where we got our name. In every instance since then, when a number of volunteers from the state of Tennessee were called for, we have superseded that amount by a great margin. But we got it originally in 1810, because that's when we had the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. That's when we fought the Creek. The Red Stick Wars. How many of y'all heard of Baton Rouge, Louisiana? Baton Rouge, Louisiana was named in honor of the Creek Indians in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Red Stick, Baton Rouge, that's the French name for it. That's where we got our history here. Andrew Jackson got together and they wrote the Constitution. It took them 14 days. He got on his horse and he rode to Washington, and he met who? Thomas Jefferson. And he handed them the Tennessee Constitution as drafted by that group that he was with. Jefferson read it that evening, and the next morning when Jackson came back to meet him, he said, this is the most, let me take it back, he said it's the least imperfect and most republic of all the state constitutions that I have read. Put his arm around him, walked him over to the legislature, and they put Tennessee in as a state that day. We did not have a plebiscite or a vote to ratify that Constitution, nor did we say here that we had to have a vote to get into the Union. They passed it at the Federal House that day, April 4th, 1796. We became a state. It's the best Constitution going. And in that Article 11, Section 26 said, the freemen of this state have a right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. In 1835, we changed the Constitution. That was just before the Civil War, and they changed one word in that. He said the free white men of Tennessee have a right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. At the end of the Civil War, we had to rewrite our Constitution. They switched it all up and put a bunch of junk in there that didn't belong. And what they did to Article then 1, Section 26, they added a codicil at the end and said, however, the legislature shall have the power by law to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. You've got to think about that now. The legislature shall have the power by law to regulate, it didn't say restrict, it said regulate, the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. Passed that in 1870. They literally did. We had a plebiscite that year. We had to go to the polls, we had to vote to say if we wanted, that is our Constitution. We offered it back to the Union government at that point, and they said, fine, you can come back in to the Union. So that was now law. The people that put that in there were a bunch of Democrats. And the reason they did that is they did not want the freed slaves to have the ability that we had always had as free citizens of the state of Tennessee to have a firearm or a knife or a club to protect themselves. Now, how many of you know who started the KKK? Which party was responsible for starting the KKK? Democrats, absolutely. They wanted to be sure that they could operate with impunity in their night riding efforts to make sure that those individuals did not get to the polls. They didn't have a chance to vote, and so therefore they cut a deal with the county sheriffs, and they said, here's the thing, we're not going to have any gun rights in the state of Tennessee anymore. And you boys, as long as you stay friendly with your buds out there, you can assign different people permits to carry. Okay? So that meant that as long as you had enough scratch and you were good buddies with the Democrat that was in charge of the sheriff's department in your county, you could in fact get a permit in Tennessee from 1874. It was no good anywhere else. When you left there and went to Nashville, you couldn't carry your weapon with you. So from 1870 to 1994, you could not legally in the state of Tennessee go outside of your county with a loaded firearm, with the exception of what's another defense against prosecution, a hunting license. If you read the back of it, it says it's defense against prosecution for carrying a loaded firearm. You've got to have permission from the landowner that you're on if you're not on your own property. But all that is the defense against prosecution, folks. It's not a license to carry a firearm. There is no right to arms currently in the state of Tennessee. What we're looking to do now is pass what's called constitutional carry. We want to go back to the Constitution, to the original. This noise that we heard last year when they talked about Fred Thompson got on TV, strutted across every screen in the state 500 times over the course of 5 weeks. If you want the opportunity to vote for judges, you've got to be against this amendment. Okay? Article 6, Section 3 of the Tennessee Constitution says that the qualified voters of this state have a right to vote for Supreme Court and appellate court justices. You already had a right to vote for judges in the state of Tennessee. Fred Thompson lied to you. There were a lot of people paid a lot of money for him to lie to you. I remember I got so sick of seeing that thing, And it's absolutely lie. And I got up on radio, I got on a stump, I talked to everybody I could stop to listen. You remember the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner? He said, I'll stop one of three. I tried to stop one of two. Tried to talk to everybody I could. And went, no, Fred tells me that if I want to be able to vote for my judges, I got to vote against this thing. They lied to you. Because what happened was we started the Tennessee plan back when Winfield Dunn was governor. And so they said, we're going to do away with what the Constitution calls for, and I'm going to appoint the appellate judges. I'm going to ask a bunch of trial attorneys to give me a few names, and I'm going to pick who they are, and then that's who's going to be your judges. And so now we have what's called a retention election. Okay? You know what a retention election is? That means they get to be in there for how many? 8 years. And you say, they're terrible, I won't get rid of them. But they just handed you 8 years of tyranny. Don't believe everything that your government tells you. Okay? So now we're going to go back to constitutional character. What we're asking for is that we go to the original inception, what they intended for the Constitution to be, which was that every man or woman had a right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. And that was every person here. And you don't need a permit, and you don't have to pay a tax. We had that bill brought forward last year. And y'all all understand when they talk about the sausage making at the legislature, what their meaning is we got several different stops to keep things from going on the floor so we don't have to vote for it, so our constituents back home don't know what we're doing up here. So we'll take the committee system and we'll just kill them there. And that way I can say, I never had an opportunity to vote for that, never came up before me. I did not get a chance to voice my opinion on that. And they can tell the truth. And let me tell you what that is. That's a gentleman's agreement among brigands is what it is. Just like in 2010, when we got the parking lot bill, or as we called it, employee safe commute, through every committee up there, they came back and said, no, it's not good. We don't like the way this is written stuff. John Harris and I sat down in Jimmy Eldridge's office with their counsel for the committee, and we said, tell us what bothers you about this bill. And they said, we don't want these farmers to, okay, we'll take farmers out of it. It's not a problem anymore, strike that, we're good. Well, we don't like the fact that, you might carry it into a building, something. No, right now what it says, and we'll make sure we understand, it has nothing to do with the brick and mortar of anybody's business. Parking lot bill. That's all we asked. We even gave up and said, if you don't want to allow them to be in the cars, Fred Smith with Federal Express, who paid more money than anybody else in the state to keep that bill from happening, we said, you give us a kiosk out front and we'll turn our weapons over to you. It's called safe storage. You keep it there, you give us a ticket. When I leave, it's just like checking your coat when you go to the ball. You hand it to them, they give you one, you tip them a little bit, and you leave, get your coat back. We offered that, it was in the bill. When it got through the committee, it was voted all the way through in the House. They had a caucus meeting because they didn't want it to pass, because we're going to lose our Chamber of Commerce is not going to give us any money next year. Full disclosure here. The one group that pays more money to buy legislators than all others put together is the Chamber of Commerce. They spend more money in the state of Tennessee lobbying than all other people put together. As bad at cooks as doctors and trial attorneys and the liquor lobby is, they pale in comparison to the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce was against us on that. They've been against us on every gun issue ever. They're not your friends. They won't say, hey, we're all for business. They're for their business and not yours. Make sure you understand that. I'll challenge them at every deal. I've talked to their lobbyists. I've asked them to bring me to the table and have a discussion with me. Refuse to do so. These are facts, folks. Okay? Chamber of Commerce, Bridgestone Tire, Federal Express were the three people, and Farm Bureau, by the way, was one of the biggest issues that we had. Even though we had taken farms completely out of it, you said, you got a problem with that? We'll cure that. Take it out. We'll make a special codicils that say farms are not included in this. No corporate farm, no individual farm, no farms, period. They still strutted out there and said, no, we're against this. I don't get paid when I go to Nashville. I don't let them buy my gas. I don't let them buy my meals at Nashville. I go on my own dime. TFA is an all-volunteer organization. We got a couple people we've hired this year. Jeff Hartline, we pay him. But in full disclosure, everybody knows he's paid. The corporate officers, the board, we're all volunteers. John Harris doesn't get a dime. I don't get a dime. We do this thing because it's a labor of love. I got a house full of granddaughters. One of these days, I'm fixing to take that last ragged breath. Until I do so, I'm going to fight the good fight. The good Lord spares me tomorrow, I'm going to have something somewhere to say about the gun laws in Tennessee. That's my challenge. That is what I am charged to do. Now, we're going to go back this year. I kill myself sometimes. I talk before I shouldn't. We got constitutional carry sponsored last year, House and Senate. Rick Womack had it in the House. We got it up before, and here's this committee system. It had to go before the Subcommittee of Civil Justice. Jim Coley is chairman of the Subcommittee of Civil Justice. When they brought that bill up, he called it for a vote instantly. Didn't ask any testimony. None of us got to get up and talk. You for it or against it? There's 6 of them on that. So, as they voted as a voice vote, they don't ever write a recorded vote. See, that's the whole point. Don't ever write it down. No. They didn't even let Rick have enough time to say, I'd like a roll call. No, we're going to, boom, nose had it. And you can see Jim Coley on the screen. If you don't know this, you can watch every committee meeting at the legislature, House and Senate. They're all televised. You can watch. You can see how badly you're getting mistreated here. All you got to do is tune it in and watch on your computer. Pretty cool. You know what's going on. So he says, no. Nose had it. The next day he went back and he changed his vote with the clerk. And he said, I want to be counted as present, not voted. And when we saw that occur, I called a friend of mine who works for a news organization in Nashville. I said, catch him in the hall. He just left the clerk's office. So they ran up there and said, Representative Coley, why in the world would you find it necessary to change your vote on this? He said, well, I can't have those people back in Memphis knowing I voted against a gun bill. I got that on film, people. Now, it's time that we go back to the original Constitution. 8 states have this right now. Vermont has never had a gun control bill. When was the last time you saw somebody on CNN say, well, there were 14 people murdered in Vermont last night with these kooks with guns? You don't, and why don't you? Because pretty much everybody in Vermont's got a gun. Who do you not pick on is people who might possibly be armed. All right. Did anybody see on Fox News the other morning they had the chief of police of Detroit talking about what was going on in his city? He said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to make a suggestion. If you can afford it, what you need to do is you need to go get your handgun carry permit training and you need to buy a gun. Because let me tell you what we've seen. The number of permits that we've had for guns have risen by 800 in the last 3 months, and the number of registered firearms have risen by 5,000. Our violent crime rate has gone down by 40% in that amount of time. Because what they keep showing on the news is you try a home invasion and there's 2 dead people on the front doorstep. Because mama has decided she ain't putting up with this anymore. Now, any law enforcement here tonight? I know we tried to get them here. Let me ask you this. Does anybody know what the average length of time for a crime is in the United States? For a violent crime, murder, armed robbery. How long do they characteristically last?
Very long. I guess less than 5 minutes.
Under a minute. Less than 60 seconds. Do you know what the average amount of time it is for a 911 response from the time you call to law enforcement can show up? 17 minutes nationwide. I live way out in the county in Madison County. We got one of the worst crime rates in the nation. It is more dangerous to live in Jackson, Tennessee than it is in Chicago, Illinois. About the only place it's any worth is East St. Louis. And if you go in there, you need your head examined. Fire department, if a house catches fire in East St. Louis, it burns. They get the marshmallows out because the fire department's not showing up. They're not going in because they're killing for the painkillers in the EMT vehicle. They're just not going to go in. Police don't go, fire department don't go. You're on your own. All right? You're on your own, period, people, whether you realize it or not. I live so far out in the county that it's a 27-minute response time. We have 3 cars in Madison County on patrol at night in the county. 3. Do you know what the ratio is of armed police officers on duty to citizens is in Madison County is 1 to every 7,500. We have one post-certified law enforcement officer on duty for every 7,500 citizens. What's the chances that you're going to have one of them when that cat steps out around you at Walmart and says, "I'd like you personally watch, please"? Chances are not very good at 1 to 700 or 7,500. You're on your own. Constitutional carry, we're going to bring this bill back up this year. We're going to do it 2 ways so that you know. We're going to re-carry the bill we had last year. May Beavers carried it in the Senate, Rick Womack carried it in the House. We haven't decided who we're going to get carried this year. We may switch up, because every time May Beavers steps to the podium, they do their best to censure her and make sure they're not going to give her a chance to describe, and they're not going to vote for it. And she's the absolute best thing in the Senate. Years and years I've been watching this. Since 2001, I have been personally involved. I've been going to the legislature about 15, 20 times. I've earned every day's vacation that I have going to the legislature. Jay can tell you, he saw me up there quite a bit this year. I don't get paid to do that. It's a requirement for myself. I want to be sure that my grandchildren know Papa did everything he could. Because if you leave it laying on the table, folks, when I was in high school, we won a state championship, little podunk town, Milan, Tennessee. We had fewer people on our team than some folks had on their cheerleading squads that we played against, Lewisburg and Kingsport and folks like that. We made our mind up we were not going to be beat. We did everything we could to win. That's what you and I need to be doing right now, is everything we can to win. You need to find legislators that share your views of the Constitution. What does it say? You're not a criminal if you haven't been adjudicated a criminal. If you're not a criminal, you need to be able to protect yourself. I mean, it's just that simple. You shouldn't let them say, "What? You know what the word regulated means?" How many really know what that means? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Regulated means practiced, folks, or aimed together. You take a double-barrel shotgun or a double-barrel rifle, when you regulate them, you put them to a central point of aim, either 50 yards in front for a shotgun or 100 for a rifle. And that's what the word regulated meant when they wrote the Constitution. You had to show up on the village commons once a month and bring your own firearm and your own ammunition, and you had to train with your group. If you could have somebody else do it for you, could pay them, but somebody in your stead had to stand up. It used to be a requirement for Vermont that you couldn't leave your home if you weren't armed, because there were lions and tigers and bears and Indians and such trouble. And so when you left, they said, "We don't have a constabulary, we can't protect you, and we need our citizens, so we're going to pass law that says it's a requirement that you go armed." What has happened to us as a nation from the time when you were required to go armed till you can't go armed? It's every bit as dangerous today as it was then, don't you think? I think so. I think it's more so. Because people understood back then what evil truly was. We celebrate that rascal now. We put him on CNN. We got TV shows about it. All right? That's where we're at. It's going to take you getting behind good legislators to pass constitutional carry, which simply will state that if you're not a criminal, if you are not adjudicated mentally deficient by a court of law, and that's something that really needs to be looked at. We got a lot of crazy people running around. We no longer have crazy people houses. What they do is they put them out on the street, and they're called homeless people now. But we simply won't take our money. We've got too many people coming across the border that haven't been here prior to now, that we need to make sure that they've got insurance and cell phones and food stamps. We won't take care of our own with our own tax money. We're bringing them in from overseas. We're bringing the Muslims in by plane load here. They don't belong here, but we're keeping them up. They're taking your tax money and doing that, but your second cousin, who may have lost his mind, is put on the street, and then they move him from St. Louis down to Memphis, and they pick him up in Memphis on the bus, and they carry him to Florida, and then they pick him up in Florida and carry him to New York. They pass him around. If y'all don't believe that, spend a little time researching. That's how we manage our insane folks today. We don't treat them anymore. We move them. Okay? About 90% of all these crazy people, as they put them, simply are homeless anymore. We dump them on the streets. And that's what you've got now. They're trying to feed themselves, and they're committing crimes to try to feed themselves. We take people who are drug addicts and we'll spend untold amount of dollars on them, but we'll take these guys who can't do any better for themselves and we'll dump them on the streets. Shame on us. It's like selling these baby parts. I hadn't got anything to do with my gun stuff that I work on. I'm embarrassed about that. Where is our state on this? I've seen a couple of representatives going, what's going on here? Let's find out what the General Assembly thinks. And what, 8 of the senators put something forward the other day and said, 8? We have 33 senators, weren't there? 33. All right, so you might get 4 or 5 of the Democrats. Oh no, we're all for this, we think it's great. But you ought to have at least 25, 28. I'm embarrassed, people. We're going to bring Constitution carry back this year. We're going to do it 2 ways. We're going to carry that bill that we had before. We're going to then simply do a repeal of Article 39, 17, 1307. Just like they did with the knife bill. Just like they did when they got rid of the 4-inch plus and allowed you to carry a switchblade or a machete or a sword. We're going to go the same way. We're going to have one on this hand, one on this hand. If they vote both them down, we're going to know this time somebody's going to have to take a stance, and they're going to have to vote so that we can count them. Demand that your representatives either sponsor or write a signature note to you saying, this is why I cannot be a sponsor. I don't believe in your right to provide security for yourself. I'm not going to pay enough police officers to do it. And by the way, they have qualified immunity. And if you get your teeth kicked out in the parking lot at Walmart, can you carry your dental bill to the police station and say, I'd like to have them teeth paid for? They'll go, well, we'd like you to be able to do it too, but you can't bring that to us. We're not responsible. They're not responsible. This protect and serve that you see on the side of a car is a pipe dream, people. It's not the facts. We don't pay them, nor are they under any obligation whatsoever to provide security for any individual in this United States. And if they tell you they are, they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart and because they're decent people. It's not because the law requires it. You are, in fact, responsible for your own security and safety. Each and every one of us. I'm going to ask y'all to join me this year. Get in touch with your legislators. You can go to tn.gov and you can find your legislator. You can find his telephone number. You can get his email address. Pound him. Send him letters. Call him. Go to Nashville, better than that. Go up there and see him in his office. It scares these crooks up there. Jay's glad to see me when I come in. There's some of them that run that. I had a guy, Johnny Shaw, who was my representative for 4 years. He never stopped in the hall and spoke to me. He saw me and he took off high stepping. He ain't even supposed to be there because he's what? He's an ordained minister, and our Constitution in Tennessee says he can't be a representative, but we don't pay any attention to what the Constitution says about that either. Because it says what they're supposed to do is be concerned with saving their flock souls. And they don't need to be up there dealing in the graft and corruption in Nashville. But we don't hold anybody to account. More especially our government. Article 1, Section 1 of the Tennessee Constitution says it's your fault. Article 1, Section 2 says that it is slavish of you if you allow it to happen. And Article 1, Section 23 says it is absolutely your duty to instruct your legislators. And if you don't, shame on you. Shame on each and every one of us. It's your responsibility to tell them what is necessary.
I saw some oath keepers on TV a couple of weeks ago, the murders in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And one of them was carrying a long rifle. He had a pistol strapped on to his side. No one said anything to him about that.
No.
He just said that he can't do that.
Well,
he can't carry a long rifle.
He was on TV at
Yes,
that
he was.
point, and they didn't want to look bad. But I can promise you, here's what you need to do. Go right up there to the Capitol steps and strap your long gun on your pistol and take a walk up them steps and see what happens to you. If there's no TV camera there, you're going to go feet first right back down that road and back into something. So it all has to do with perception and with who's watching at that point. The law in the state of Tennessee says that you got to be hunting, you got to be targeted, so you can be carrying a long gun. Tennessee, period.
And what about a sidearm? What about a pistol?
Now, if you have a handgun carry permit, and we have reciprocity with most other states, most of these oath keepers have got handgun carry permits.
Right.
I know several of them.
Right.
Of more important than the one in Chattanooga was that bunch up there in Ferguson, Missouri the other day. If you remember, after they beat the stuffing out of that reporter, he hired him four of those guys to come up there, and the police told him, said, y'all can't be out there with them. And they said, no, let's not be out here, because Missouri law says we can. Because Missouri is one of those states that says you can carry a long gun, just like Texas.
So you're saying you can open carry a pistol?
In Tennessee, absolutely, if you have your permit, you sure can. Tennessee's law on, we don't have a concealed carry permit, we have a handgun carry permit. So as long as you have a permit, you can carry open or concealed. Now, go to Kentucky, you can carry one open all day long, you don't have to have a permit.
I know.
North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, all those states allow you to open carry without a permit. Just us doesn't allow that. What the two Democratic bastions of the South still. Okay? 33, remember that, 33 states. That's a plurality, folks. Allow open carry without a permit. Any other questions?
Can you deal with two of the biggest things you hear from, the complaints you hear from law enforcement about constitutional carry and from some gun owners? So excuse me, gun shop owners.
Gun shop, the thing about the gun shops is they tend to also be associated with people that teach handgun carry permit classes, okay? And they say, well, we need to be sure that you're trained. And that's what police say, we don't want people just walking around out here with guns that haven't been trained, adequately trained. Y'all ever shot with a group of police officers? They can't hit a barn normally. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. A case in point, I have an 11-year-old granddaughter who shoots 3 guns down in Jackson. She has her own special purpose built AR-15. It's a 25 by 223 Wildcat that I built for her. She has a CZ custom 9mm, and she has a CZ 20-gauge shotgun. And she'll wear you out on that 3-gun range. That day, and what they do at 3-gun, you might be shooting 15 yards with your rifle, or you might be shooting 500 yards. That day was 250 yards. One of my good friends down there is Tyrese Miller, who is a former Marine and as good a man as there is. He's a black officer. And I was watching her shoot at 250 yards offhand. She printed an 11-inch group for 25 yards. He went, my God. He said, if people think that there's going to be a race war in this United States, he said, let me explain something, Richard. He said, you see how your granddaughter shooting out? He said, that's because you spend time with her. He said, these hood rats that I deal with every day got a 9mm, they turn it sideways and try to kill a brother dope dealer at 10 yards from the middle of the street, they won't hit him one time. And here's your granddaughter shooting an 11-inch group, 250 yards. Who do they think's going to win that? Now, it's a fact. If you want your children to be free, if you want them to understand what liberty is, take a child shooting. In the first place, they won't pick your weapon up and kill themselves when you're not home if they understand what they'll do. My father, I was a sharecropper's kid. We lived in rural Wheaton County, Tennessee. And we had a 2,500 count chicken house in the backyard. It's the biggest thing. I hate chickens to this day. All right. When you try to catch all 2,500, or about 2,000 or 25,000 or 20,000, because you lose that many over laying time. But you ever tried to put 20,000 chickens in them little wooden coops? You start with a big piece of chicken wire, walking across the brothers and sisters, as you catch them stuff, and you won't have a piece of hide on your hand right there. I hate chickens. But they were money to my father. We canned eggs to 2 o'clock every night, washed them off and held them up in front of a light, and the good ones go there, and these go to people who feed them to hogs. So, in the corner, behind the kitchen door, was a double-barrel 12-gauge shotgun. It was just like he was a good chopping actor, he was a good cross-cut saw. Don't touch my tools, because if you do, the hide missing won't be on your arm. Okay? That's the way we was raised. We all knew what they were for. We grew up around them. The time I was 6 years old, I was holding coons out of a tree with that old Wider Johnson that I've still got that still ain't shot nobody. I mean, my wife would have called me tonight, she jumped up, went down the street and killed one of them kids walking and playing on the bicycle. No, it doesn't, because it can't. Take these children shooting, instill in them an understanding. Used to, when we taught, we used to have gun safety classes in schools in Tennessee. You can't do that anymore. Why? These liberals would have a heart attack. But it's the smart thing. And it's what we ought to demand that. Y'all can all get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not the most popular individual out there, but you'll always find the truth. You see, Richard Archie, I'm not shy one bit. I take on those individuals that need to be taken on, and I'll laud those like Jay who need to be lauded. He has my full support. This is a guy that understands it. There are few of them. Make sure, it is so important you pick the phone up every once in a while and say, I appreciate you, because you don't get that much, I would suspect. Everybody's looking for something. Yes, sir.
I just want to ask a question about the Chamber of Commerce. You said spend all this money lobbying against laws like the gun law.
That's correct.
Well, they've got to be really far connected from like a local Chamber of Commerce, because I know they're pitifully underfunded and, you know, volunteers mainly.
Oh, we're not talking about your local Dover Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
We're talking about the state and federal Chamber of
So
Commerce.
that's totally
Different situation.
totally separate.
Yeah.
So does our local one send money to them though?
See, I don't know, because I'm not a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
Not sure. Probably, maybe something, but now, the Farm Bureau is the Farm Bureau, and even though our local guys may not have agreed with them lobbying, that is who lobbies, you know, the state farm.
How many of you people got Farm Bureau insurance?
Just right.
Have you ever got a telephone call from them saying, what do you think about constitutional carry? Have you been polled with them, and yet they'll walk out there and say, this is the stance of Farm Bureau? I've got a case the red hind end with them people right now. I mean, bad. I dropped every, I had all of my insurance Farm Bureau. I wouldn't pay them another dime for anything, because they're not good. We hire them to provide insurance. We don't hire them to lobby the darn legislature. I'll take my own, I buy my own dancing girls. I don't need y'all to tell me which ones to get, and I want your money for it. I don't want Farm Bureau going up there telling these people how to vote, because they're taking my money and they're doing it, and they didn't ask me what I thought. It's not their place. It's not the Chamber's place either. But what they're doing, the National and the State Chamber of Commerce is looking after big business. If you read your Constitution, it tells you you have a right to a jury trial in the state of Tennessee. And what kills me is I keep hearing these guys stand and say, well, this conservative Republican group up here has made sure that we've done nothing but look after your interest. And you can't hardly get a jury trial in the state of Tennessee anymore. You can't get one for if you're hurt on the job. No, they got a cat that they pay that sits up there and decides how much you can get if you get hurt on the job. Now, wait a minute. Whose interest are they looking after? Mine, the little guy out here that's actually paying the bills, because I haven't found anybody that says, we're going to cut you some slack and you don't owe us any more tax. But Fred Smith with FedEx got a $20 million tax break this year. Now, he's one of the richest individuals in the United States. He gets that tax break, and I get levied for a little more. It's hard for me to understand that, Pat, folks. But really, it's not. I get it. Then what's got to go and get, and then what don't want it. It's about that simple. If we allow it to be that way. The other side about it is that the legislature is your business. If you will simply make it so. You have an obligation to be involved in this. Article 1, Section 23, read it. It says that you have a right to assemble and to redress your grievances with your legislature, and it is your duty to inform them. Now, if you don't, shame on you. Anything else?
Thanks.
Okay. The other thing that I want to say before we close here tonight, TFA is having its 20th anniversary this next month, September 19th, that's 2 days after the 17th there, at Smiley Hollow up at Goodlettsville. We've got a litany of state legislators who are going to show up, and we're going to be talking about constitutional carry and about what we plan to do this year. And we've got some others. We've got Bill Bennett coming in. He was a secretary, and he had something to do, and I'm not sure exactly, of education, but he also, before he got into that, he was involved in NSA at one point. I found that out there, but they didn't know that. So, I mean, this cat knows his business. I've got tickets here for anybody that wants to go. Every dime that goes this year is going to go to our PAC, because the state of Tennessee tried this last year to say that TFA was a charity. Those of you who know John Harrison, I know we're the least thing from a charity. And they said, well, anybody that tries to educate the population or the public is a charity. And so therefore we need you to register, we need you to pay a registration fee, and we'd like to see your donor list. And we told them there's fat chance that's gonna happen. We're not gonna do it. And so we've been in talks with them, and as I understand today, we finally reached a resolution with a memorandum of understanding that we're not a charity. Imagine that. But we are going to have our event Saturday, September 19th. It'll be at 11 o'clock till 2 in the afternoon at Smiley Hollow. I've got tickets, they're $50 a piece. And what we're going to do is try to pick off 1 or 2 more of these sorry rapscallions that are keeping you from enjoying your constitutional rights to keep and bear arms. I've got one in my mind. I'm not going to say it yet. As soon as I find a candidate, I'm going to back him. If y'all remember Deborah Maggart, it's going to be another Deborah Maggart moment this year, because I am so absolutely furious about what happened this time. For a man to break the law and for our state officials not to do anything about it, when we got him on camera, we got him on film, and we all know he did it. I'm just, maybe next time when I'm running down the road 75 miles an hour and that state trooper pulls me over, I'll say, well, I'm going to go up to the bar and have the clerk say I didn't do that. That's all right with y'all, and I just won't pay that fine. That's about what we've got going on. But anyway, September 19th, 11 to 2 in the afternoon, up at Goodlettsville. It's going to be a pretty good group of folks to come up there and listen to. Sir. One more thing I want to say. On the 17th of next month, we're going to have a rally on Legislative Plaza, and it's called Tennessee We Must. It's a rally for the protection of our religious freedoms and our state's rights. I'm taking a day's vacation and I'm going to go, because I want to be counted in that number. Remember that old hymn that we used to have, I want to be counted in that number? I want to be counted in that number. I'm going to take a day and I'm going to go. Yes, Dave?
One thing on that, they're asking to have at least 50 people from each county.
Each county.
At that event.
Yeah.
We got 95 counties and they want 50 from each county that will be there. All right, so if you can all be there, it's possible, please be there. It's from 11 to 1, Legislative Plaza. There's the Tennessee Pastors Network, they're going to talk, and then the legislators, they're going to announce some legislation in reference to freedom of religion, 10th Amendment issues. All right, now I'm not saying everything they're going to announce will be specific of the exact legislation, but they're going to let us know, and if I'm saying something wrong here.
Let me address the crowd for a minute.
Certainly.
On that, I've been working with there's a group of us conservative state representatives that have been working on this. Judge Matheny will be speaking at that event. Got confirmation yesterday, Rafael Cruz, Senator Cruz's father, will be speaking at the event as well. What Judge Matheny's doing, he's making up signs. So if you decide to go, there'll be a sign for, what's the district number, 70?
Oh, the district is 75. So they're not by county?
So they will have 75.
Okay.
But with that, everybody that it will be going from here wear a white shirt. And as we stand up on there, it'll be red, white, and blue. And so Middle Tennessee will be white. Okay? So with that, Judge's having the signs made up, so we'll have that. There'll be the white shirts. Right before that time, we will be having a caucus meeting talking about a bilateral session. And if we get enough votes in the House, the bilateral session, what a bilateral session is for us to tell our U.S. representative senators saying, hey, come on down to Nashville. We want to meet with you on the House floor. And just like you folks come to us, come to Tim Wergo, whatever, and that's what we need to do, is have you guys stay in contact with us. I mean, I can't figure everything out or know what you're thinking. So with that, if you've got a problem with the Second Amendment, if you've got a problem with something in states' rights or anything else, and everybody's been really good at contacting me, getting me information so I can dig into it, because I don't really know what all the issues are. But with that bilateral session, just like you telling me what you want, we need to be telling Washington, D.C. what we want as well. So that bilateral session, if we can get everything done, we will be meeting in the Capitol Library, and as soon as we finish that, then we'll be joining the crowd out there on the walk with Rafael Cruz and all of you who decide to show up. So it's going to be a good event. We've been working for a couple months on it now.
Is there other legislation that they're going to?
Yeah, it's with that. We've been, if we don't meet in Nashville, we've been having conference calls, And with that, we were supposed to have a conference call yesterday afternoon, and then I got a text message, we're going to hold off. At the same time, we got confirmation of Rafael Cruz. We're supposed to have another conference call next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. And what we're doing right now is talking about that legislation, what we want to present when we step out there saying, folks, this is what we're, the same-sex marriage issues that we've got going on. The EPA, what are they doing to the state of Tennessee, as well as, all states ought to be upset about the nonsense going on right now. And so with that, we really haven't pinned out all of the legislation that we want to present when we go back into session right in the middle of January, when we'll be right at it again. And there's a lot of excitement because there's things that all of you are basically pissed off about that we're going to, it's coming full circle. Those sleeping giants, those of us who've been sitting back just watching everything, hoping that it'll straighten out, we're finally mustering up enough strength that we're angry about it, and now we're doing something about it. So it's going to be exciting.